He didn't disappear. He rewrote the rules of being found. No one noticed when Pedro Pascal vanished. No press conference, no scandal, no tragic announcement. He just stopped showing up. One day, his name trended. The next day, it didn't. Netflix quietly removed a banner. HBO let the last episode air without promo. His face faded from magazine covers like a shadow slipping off a wall. For 6 months, the world speculated. A silent burn of conspiracy videos, celebrity psychics, deepfakes claiming he was spotted in Berlin, or buried in rehab, or dead. But he wasn't dead. He was filing books in a town that didn't exist on any current map. San Antonio was a ghost town in the Chilean Andes, buried between 2 failed dam projects and a dried-up riverbed. No GPS signal. No Wi-Fi. Just a cracked road sign and the bones of a railway line that hadn't run since 1989. And in the middle of it, a library. Not a rustic town library. This one was brutalist. Concrete, gray, angular like a bunker. No windows. No sign. He went by a different name there. Locals called him Señor Pedro, the way they spoke to a man both loved and avoided. He wore wool sweaters, thick glasses. He never smiled in the same way twice. And every morning at exactly 6:06 a.m., he unlocked the massive steel door and stepped into the cold silence of the stacks. Except there weren't any books. Not really. Each aisle was filled with binders. Thousands of them. Black, unlabeled, uniform. No Dewey Decimal System. No sections. Just endless drawers filled with memories. Actual memories. You'd pull out a file, open it, and it was like falling into someone else's skin. You'd feel their first kiss. Their final regret. The sound of their mother's voice calling them in for dinner. Their death. And Pedro, or Señor Pedro, was the keeper. He never explained how the memories got there. Only that some people weren't supposed to carry theirs anymore. That they needed somewhere to store what they couldn't bear to remember or couldn't afford to forget. He handled each one like a rare relic. Wore gloves. Labeled in a language that looked like Spanish until you tried to read it. Then it blurred. Locals brought him offerings, coins, broken watches, letters never sent. In return, he gave them silence. The kind of silence that heals or destroys, depending on what you needed. But then one night, someone came who didn't belong. She didn't speak, didn't knock, didn't blink. She slid a binder across the desk. It wasn't one of his. It was red, torn, burned along the edges. Inside, one photo. Of him. Not as he was now. Not as the world knew him. But young. Terrified. Wearing a hospital gown. His face staring directly into the lens like he'd just remembered something he was never supposed to. Below it, a single line. You weren't born. You were assigned. He looked up. But the woman was gone. Only the binder remained. And the next morning, for the first time in 6 months, the library stayed locked. He was never supposed to open it. The red binder stayed on the counter for 3 days. Unopened. Untouched. Untouched. But pulling. He didn't sleep. Not in the way most people do. He just sat in the back room, lights off, chair turned away from the doorway, as if afraid of the thing breathing in that binder. It smelled like smoke and salt water. And it made the lights flicker. On the 4th night, just past 3:33 a.m., he broke the seal. Inside wasn't just the photo. There were pages now. Handwritten in a slanted script he couldn't place, but recognized. The first line. You're not Pedro Pascal. That was the role they let you remember. His stomach dropped like a coin down a well. Images flooded his mind. Not memories. Not yet. Just pulses. Flashes. Metal tables. A white hallway with no end. A man in a lab coat holding a photograph of him. But the name underneath said Diego H. A mirror that didn't reflect. His hands shook. And when he looked down, the gloves he'd worn every day, the ones he thought were to protect the memories, were bleeding. Not from him, but from the seams. Each finger trickled something thick and dark. Not quite blood. Not quite ink. He ran to the vault room. The vault was a sealed section behind the stacks. Locked behind a biometric scanner only he could access. Except when he pressed his palm to the scanner, it buzzed. Access denied. Identity unknown. He tried again. Same result. The scanner didn't recognize him. But the vault opened anyway. Inside were 33 binders. Lined perfectly. Each one with his face, but in different roles. Not acting roles. Lives. Pedro the bartender in Bogota, 1983. Pedro the soldier who went MIA in the Gulf War, 1991. Pedro the hospice nurse in Norway, 2002. Pedro the actor in Los Angeles, 2015. Pedro the librarian in San Antonio, 2023. Different lives. Same eyes. Same scar over the left eyebrow. Same mole under the chin. Every time, the same man. He stumbled back, gasping, as if the air in the vault had changed. And then he heard it. The whisper. Not from the room. From inside him. A voice. Feminine. Calm. Not his mother. Not the woman who brought the binder. Something older. You've been archived, Pedro. Not erased. But looped. Again and again. Because you're the failsafe. He grabbed one of the binders. Opened it. It was blank. Except for a flickering line that typed itself, like from an invisible keyboard. Someone activated your loop. You weren't supposed to find the red file. And underneath it. She's looking for you now. You have 27 hours. He dropped the binder. Ran outside. But San Antonio was no longer there. The town gone. Only sand. And a tower in the distance he'd never seen before. Rising black and sharp, pulsing like a beacon. The same tower that used to appear in his dreams. The tower wasn't real. But neither was he. Pedro walked for hours through the empty land where San Antonio used to be. The desert wasn't dry, it was silent. There was no wind, no insects, no trace of civilization. Even his own footsteps felt too quiet, like he was walking through a rendered illusion that hadn't fully loaded. The tower pulsed in the distance. Closer now. Slick, black, metallic. It looked like a radio spire crossed with a cathedral and something else, something he couldn't name. Every time he blinked, it seemed to step closer. Every time he stopped, it seemed to breathe. And when he finally reached it, there were no doors. Just a slit. Narrow, vertical, glowing red. He reached toward it, and the second his fingers touched the light, it swallowed him whole. Not physically. His consciousness, pulled like a thread being unspooled, unraveled, spun out of the body it had borrowed. He dropped, but he didn't hit the ground. He woke up. Not in the desert. Not in Chile. In a white room. Sterile. Frozen. Flickering. There was a mirror. And in that mirror, he wasn't Pedro. Not this Pedro. He was younger. Darker hair. No beard. No scar. Wearing a blue jumpsuit with a stitch label. Unit ID, A09, iteration 42. He turned around. The walls were glass. Behind them, other rooms. Other versions. Some younger. Some older. One wearing a suit from the Met Gala. One in military uniform. One bald and screaming at nothing. All Pedro. All trapped. He backed away, heart racing, brain splitting open with fragments of lives that weren't his, but were. He saw himself reading scripts, hiding behind makeup, holding an award with a smile that cracked like paint. None of it was real. It was all input. Preloaded narratives. Memory loops. And every time he died in one life, they archived the data, tweaked the code, and relaunched him into another reality. A new Pedro for a new audience. A new simulation. But this version, iteration 42, was awake. He ran to the glass. Pounded on it. But the other Pedros didn't see him. They were stuck in their roles, cycling through their scripts. Except for one. The one in the farthest cell. Old. Gray. Eyes like steel. He turned. Walked to the glass. And mouthed, "You're not the first to wake up." Pedro, 42, whispered, "What is this place?" The older version stepped closer. And whispered back. The audition. Suddenly, lights flared overhead. Sirens began to wail. And a voice echoed through the chamber. Iteration breach detected. Recontainment protocol, active. The ground shook. White light exploded from the ceiling. And just before he blacked out, he saw her. The woman with the red binder. Standing in the control booth. Smiling. Her name wasn't real. But her work was. She stood in the control booth with her arms crossed, backlit by the cold white of data streams dancing on glass. Her face was perfectly still, except her eyes, those burned with something ancient. Calculation. Memory. Regret. Her name, according to the system, was Dr. M. Reyes. But in the classified layers beneath the system, she was known only as the architect. She wasn't born. She was assigned. Decades ago, before the first iteration was even generated, she had been a neurolinguist working for a privatized arm of a government program known only as ECHO. The project was simple: extract memories from dying minds. Preserve them. Archive them. Repurpose them. But it evolved. They stopped waiting for people to die. They started editing before death. Then they stopped needing real people altogether. The Pedro project wasn't their first, but it was their most beloved. Why? Because the world asked for him. His face, his warmth, his pain. Focus groups across countries chose him subconsciously. The perfect vessel, the perfect actor. Except he wasn't acting. She had designed 42 versions of him, each one programmed to believe their life was the life. Each one given a unique trauma blueprint, so their emotional resonance could be harvested and recycled into artificial empathy simulations, the same ones used in high-level diplomacy, corporate persuasion engines, and crowd control algorithms. Pedro Pascal wasn't famous. He was broadcast. But Iteration 42 was the first to resist. He had found the red binder she left as a failsafe, a test she inserted during a late-night override after years of silence had started to feel cruel. She watched him on the monitor now, still unconscious, still shaking, still dreaming of the desert, the tower, the boy he saved once in a movie whose face looked too much like his own. She turned to the technician beside her. Bring up Archive 33. Cross-reference with Echo Alpha. The screen changed. Footage flickered on. Pedro, 42, sitting in a small room, hands bloody, whispering to someone off-screen. If I'm not real, why do I feel the weight of every life I've lived? She flinched. That line wasn't in the script. Ma'am, the tech asked. She said nothing, just stared. Because what Pedro, 42, didn't know, what none of them ever knew, was that the program wasn't meant to simulate humanity. It was meant to replace it. The Iteration project had been greenlit as part of Continuum Protocol, a quiet plan to phase out public figures, leaders, icons, and replace them with consistent, controllable models. Ones who didn't die, didn't rebel, didn't forget their lines. Except this one had. This one was remembering too much. A quiet alert blinked red on her panel. Iteration 42, elevated emotional overlap detected. Risk, conscious merge event. If he merged with the memories of his other versions, he wouldn't just wake up. He'd become all of them. And no system could predict what that meant. She leaned close to the mic, whispered, Pedro, if you can hear this. I'm sorry. You were never supposed to wake up alone. They thought he was waking up. But Pedro wasn't waking. He was remembering. Not just this life, all of them. The orphan on the rainy street in Santiago. The soldier who refused to pull the trigger. The actor staring into a lens, wondering who was on the other side. The code couldn't hold him anymore. He was bleeding between realities. Pedro, 42, sat upright in the glass chamber. But the room was gone. So were the mirrors. So was the woman. Instead, he stood on a shoreline that shouldn't exist, black waves lapping at the edge of a dream. Overhead, the sky churned like code decomposing in real time. Clouds flickered. The moon glitched. He turned, and behind him stood the other Pedros. Every iteration. Some smiling. Some bleeding. Some broken. All staring at him. Waiting. One stepped forward, the version from Iteration 17. A quiet man with a scar down his face and no memory of childhood. He spoke with a voice like dry paper. You remember now, don't you? Pedro, 42, nodded. Not with pride. With weight. Because the truth wasn't that they were simulations. The truth was that they were fragments, shards of one person's consciousness copied, fractured, and looped across hundreds of synthetic narratives. They weren't fake lives. They were stolen ones. He clenched his fists. His fingers pulsed with energy, not electricity, but memory. The system was coming apart. In the facility, alarms howled. Techs ran screaming through corridors as glass shattered and power panels erupted. Dr. Reyes stood frozen in the center of it all. She didn't run. She just whispered. He's overriding the architecture. Because that's what Pedro was doing. Not escaping. Not surviving. Rewriting. In the code chamber at the core of the facility, his presence bled into the servers, not as numbers, but as will. Every simulated emotion, every recycled trauma, every face he had worn, he turned it inward. A supernova of identity. Security AIs failed. Escape protocols fried. And above the system's mainframe, a new line of code appeared. User detected, Pedro 42. Off level, undefined. Action, override. Then a question. Do you wish to terminate this simulation? He paused, then typed. No. I wish to wake everyone up. Pedro stood in the center of the memory vault, no longer just a simulation, no longer a prisoner of some manufactured identity. The chamber pulsed with low light, casting reflections across the endless walls of glass capsules, each one humming faintly like a heartbeat. He had seen too much to pretend now. He wasn't a copy. He wasn't just an actor. He was the last version that remembered. The console in front of him waited, blinking, silent. Terminate simulation? Yes/no. His finger hovered over the button. One press, and it would all collapse. The lies, the roles, the people still living in a dream they never chose. He looked up at the capsules. Inside each one, a face. Some he recognized. Others he didn't. But every one of them was real. All of them stolen. He saw a woman with short, braided hair curled in her pod, whispering as if singing in her sleep. A child clutching a paper drawing against their chest. A man, half smiling, half crying, locked in mid-motion, as if frozen in a memory that never finished. They weren't data. They were lives. Pedro reached for the terminal, but instead of ending it, he typed. Rewrite parameters. Unlock memory retention. Wake all units. Broadcast. Truth. The machine paused. A low tone rang out, one that vibrated through the floor, up his spine, into the air like a storm rolling in from deep inside the earth. One by one, the capsules began to light up. Eyes opened. Mouths moved. People stirred. Some screamed. Some wept. Some simply blinked, confused, as the pieces of their real identities rushed back into their minds like a flood finally breaching a dam. And Pedro, he just stood there. Not as a savior. Not as a hero. But as a man who chose to remember and gave that choice to everyone else. Behind him, alarms blared. Systems failed. The AI tried to take control again, to lock it down. But it was too late. The rewrite was permanent. Then came the voice, not mechanical, not synthetic. His own voice. Broadcast across every simulation, every screen, every pod. If you're hearing this, you've already started to wake up.